This is Chasing the Cutoff with Troy Eid. Conversations with professional people age 40 and older who balance busy careers with excellence in endurance athletics and extreme sports. From Denver, Colorado, here's Troy Eid.
Welcome to Chasing the Cutoff. I'm Troy Eid in Denver, Colorado. And with me is the mighty Barry Sackett. Barry, how are you today?
I'm great, Troy. Thanks for having me.
So, Barry, this is really a thrill for me. And I've been accused of unbridled, irrational exuberance for years. But I don't think that I would have a podcast except for you, because you're the person who years ago said, you really ought to do something on LinkedIn and have a dedicated channel or do something. And that was the first time that had ever crossed my mind. And actually, it was prompted by you. And
wow.
As a result of that and your encouragement, I was beginning to then listen to family and friends and decided, well, let's just try to do a podcast. And that was a direct response to that. So I just wanted to thank you in person for that.
Oh, that's cool. No, I remember our conversation about Law on the Run and how you should make a channel of it because, there's a lot of us running lawyers out there that think we're all alone. And you were kind of the person that called us all together. So thank you.
Well, you've been a pioneer in this sport for a long time. So we got a lot of things to talk about. Backyard ultras, you've been incredibly accomplished at backyard ultras. I want to talk to you about that phenomena. We have some who don't know what those are, and so we'll get into that a bit. You've been very prolific in 100-mile races. You finished 6th overall in the Cowboy 200, which is no mean feat. And you've had some other tremendous race results, which we'll talk about. But you've also been the model in so many respects for this podcast in that I think you fit in the age bracket. I think you're over 40.
Yes, thank you.
I'm pretty sure you are.
A little over 40, yeah.
And you're really super professional and successful. You've been a leader in the legal profession for a long time. And I know you'll talk about also your civic engagement. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Yeah, love to talk about running. So always happy to do it.
And you're looking like a lawyer today. So where are you today geographically and where are we coming to?
Yeah, I'm sitting in Sioux Falls, South Dakota at our office. As I said earlier, I was hoping to show you the falls are right out our window, but the backlighting was a little bit rough. So we're in the new Steel District building down on up on the north end of Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
So talk about the South Dakota running scene. It seems very vibrant, and you've done some amazing races in South Dakota and in the areas surrounding South Dakota and in Iowa and in other parts of the Midwest. So talk a little bit about what it's like to be a road runner and a trail runner in South Dakota.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a great group down here. There's a local running store, 605 Running Company. 605 is our zip or our area code, which is for the whole state. We only have one. Most metropolitan areas have 5. We've got one. We don't have a lot of people, but the people that we have are pretty hardy. It's just we've created a great couple of different groups of trail runners versus road runners. I cross every one of them. I am a completely omnivorous runner. I'll run a mile or a 200 mile. I don't care at all. But it's fun to get them all together. Some real diehards. One of my kind of closest running partner is Lance Smith, and he's just amazing. Just gets us involved in all kinds of different fun activities that we end up raising money and awareness for all kinds of different activities. Just 2 weeks ago, he ran an FKT out in the Black Hills, the Mickelson Trail. He ran 110 miles in 24 hours and 42 minutes and 8 seconds, I think, if I remember right. I was so lucky to pace him on part of it. It was just a perfect day out there. So we're always putting together, fun things. The 437 project is an amazing project that was started by Mayor Tenhaken here in Sioux Falls, and is now, I think, in its 6th year, where a group runs across the state to create awareness about the 988 number. suicide helpline here and throughout the country. So we usually kind of have a purpose for our running. Not always. Sometimes we just go out and run because we love to run. But it's fun. We don't have the mountains, so vert is sometimes a challenge. I'm running a 50K here in town in May that is on the front of a hill. It's a 0.3 of a mile loop on a hill, and we run around it 100 times in order to get a 50K. So you're always either going up the hill or down the hill, and that's how we get our vert occasionally. So we're jealous of all the mountains you guys have out there.
Well, it kind of cuts both ways. The neighborhood that I live in is at about 6,800 feet where my house is. And if I do a road run from my house in any direction, I have to at least get 1,000 feet of vert.
Wow.
Unless I'm just running like half a mile or to a mile. But literally, if I do a 3-mile loop, it's 1,000 feet of vertical in my neighborhood. So it's kind of a mixed bag, right? There's days I just don't want to run vert, and I'm just having to run vert anyway.
Right. And then I'm like trying to then I find my 300-mile or 300-foot hill, and I have to run it up and down it 3 times. So
is that part of the phenomena of the backyard ultra? Let me just start there. I'm so interested in this. The concept of running a looped race, and what is a backyard ultra? What is the timing? What is the distance? Help us understand that.
Yeah, so the backyard ultra was originally started by Laz, who does the Barkley marathons in his backyard. And I have friends that have run in his backyard, and the length of the loop is 4.166666 miles, and the reason it's that distance is if you divide 100 miles by 24, that's how many miles you have to run every hour in order to get 100 miles in a day. And so basically there's one winner, and everybody else has a DNF. So you start out, and every hour you have to complete that 4.1666 loop. And as long as you finish the last one, you can start the next one, and on and on and on until there's only one person left who finishes the last loop, and they're the winner. The person that gets them there is credited with the assist. Everybody else gets the DNF. So it's kind of typical Laz style of being a little bit harsh. But the great thing about it is, I've run a number of them. I'm finally starting to figure them out, because running fast does not help you. You need to pace yourself. You need to be, remembering that you got to keep doing this. There's no finish line until everybody else quits. So it's a lot of fun, and it allows you to do ultra distances without, you have one aid station. You can kind of set up anywhere and do them. And I've done them where they're technical trails at ski resorts where you're running up and down a hill. I just did one out in the Cowboy backyard, which they did for the first time this year, which was absolutely flat. If you want to go a long time in one of these things, I recommend that one. Because they're great race directors, and they really treat you well, but it's perfectly set up to make sure you can keep going as long as you can keep going. So they're a lot of fun.
That's Chase Hammond's race, right? And was it in Nebraska?
That's right. Yep. Exactly.
Where is it? Nebraska someplace?
Yeah, it's on the Cowboy. What is the name? O'Neill, okay. Which was remember 80 some miles into Cowboy. You're right in their conference center, and the starting line is right outside the door. You run 2 miles and a little bit more up the trail, and you come back and you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. So, you just create a huge relationship with everybody that's running in that group, because everybody's cheering for everybody. Nobody wants anybody to quit. In the end, nobody's trying to really beat anybody. I suppose when you're down to those last 2, which I've never gotten to, that you may be praying that somebody quits so you can finally stop. But I've never been in that situation. But otherwise, it's just a ton of fun.
So how many of those have you done, do you think? How many backyard ultras?
Oh, I've done 5 or 6. I haven't, like I said, I'm an omnivore. I kind of do all kinds of races.
Oh, yeah.
But I certainly enjoy those ones more, and had a great time at Chase's last year. And it's a different kind of running. You know, I used to be a marathoner and, you know, ran fast and then I got into ultras and ran long, and these things are almost different. You're just really trying to maintain yourself and problem solve, because that's what it is. You just got to kind of keep doing whatever it takes to keep moving, which is a different kind of thought process.
Did you have that sort of classic path where you were running? Did you run in high school? Did you run in college? And then eventually get into longer distances, half marathons, and then pivot over to the trail? Was that your path, or was it a little different than that?
Well, I started out with a typical path. I was, my dad actually was a runner. He went to Iowa State on a track scholarship, and then got drafted to go to Korea and came back, and he didn't run anymore after that. But my siblings and my family were runners. And so in high school, up through my sophomore year, I was second on varsity. I was pretty quick on cross country and on long distance on the track. But I partied, and that became more important to me in some respects than running into my junior year. And then my senior year, I graduated early, and I worked in the Iowa Senate for a year as a page. Went to college and, you know, hadn't really run, put on my freshman 40. And then my mother, who was the chief judge of the Iowa Court of Appeals, did a LLM program at the University of Virginia. And I went out with her for the summer to take some classes at UVA when she was out there. And I decided I was going to start running again. And kind of like your neighborhood, Charlottesville has lots of hills, and it's incredibly humid and hot all summer long. So I came back, and my roommate in college called it the Virginia Slims, because I lost about 30 pounds from running all over Charlottesville. So, you know, through a period of time, I would run. I lived out in the mountains in Lake Tahoe. I lived out on the beach in California. So I would do other things as well as run. But then when I moved back to the Midwest in 2007, we were pregnant with our second child, and I was driving home from work one day, and I was listening to NPR, and there was a story about a woman that did a running streak with her son, who was 9 years old, and it was kind of a bonding experience for them. And I thought to myself, well, I should run every day while my wife is pregnant, because I know I will eat ice cream with her when I get home. So that will be my way to stave that off. And I called my brother and sister who run, and I said, hey, I'm going to run every day for this period of time. You guys want to run with me? And they both agreed to do it. My brother lasted about 3 weeks, and my sister about a month, but I've been running every day since then. So over 16 years, I've run every single day, which has been awesome. I've run in 6 continents, occasionally in an airport, never on a treadmill. I've never had to do treadmill miles. So that really kind of refocused me on running as something that was very important to me. And that's where I got fast for a while in marathons, and did the U.S. marathon majors, and had a lot of fun there. And then as I aged, I also got into triathlons quite a bit, Ironmans and other things. But as I've gotten older, I'm not getting faster, but I can go longer. So that's the game.
So this is fascinating. I want to pause you and go back to the run streak, because it's fascinating. What do you remember the day and the year that it started?
November 4th, 2009.
November 4th, 2009. So have you never missed a day since then running?
Nope.
You've run at least
I've had some close calls, but I've never missed a day.
Wow. And you've run at least a mile every day?
Yeah. So there is an association of run streakers. If you look it up, it's runeveryday.org. So it's got a list of the people who have the longest run streaks. And interestingly, the guy that has the longest run streak, he's since retired it, started the day I was born, which is May 26, 1969. and he ran for 55 years every single day.
Wow.
But a mile is the minimum. So we kind of call it in the association a measly mile. You rarely just run a mile, but that's the minimum that you got to get at least a mile in.
That's astounding. I just have to relate. I've had one major running surgery when I had my right Achilles eviscerated, and then had experimental surgery to rebuild it. So months went by before I could even stand. It took me so long to be able to run again. I couldn't walk. I've had another major surgery for achalasia where I had my esophagus and my stomach rebuilt, basically. Have you just never had any kind of injuries?
I mean, I've got niggles and niggles and niggles on niggles, but I don't, there was certainly days after 200 milers. Those are hard days
to
get a mile in. I really believe, though, kind of the running streak has given me the durability to do a lot of this stuff because, often the best thing for you is to just get out there and pound on your legs a little bit and make sure they still work.
That's kind of the Dean Karnazes view, I suppose. And it's funny, Seth James Damore, who's been on this program.
I love Seth. That's great.
He made the same point, actually, Bear. It's interesting. He made the point. He thinks that you can sort of bulletproof yourself, through that absolutely constant effort. And it sounds like that might be kind of your experience as well.
It is, yeah. I mean, I have a couple of tricks. One is never wear the same shoes 2 days in a row. Like people say, what shoes do you wear? I said, I've got every brand my wife made me get a whole separate room of shoes because they smelled so bad that I put them down in the basement. But, that's one key. Just, change up your shoes, change up your stride. The other key to this thing is a dog that well. I've got Darwin, an Aussie Shepherd right now, but I've had 5 dogs through my running streak, and I know you run with your dogs every day. Best piece of exercise equipment ever, right? I mean, they will get up every morning and run with you, no matter what.
So was Darwin named for Charles Darwin, or what? Where'd the name come from?
He was actually a double entendre, Charles Darwin, and then Darwin, the capital of the Northwest Province of Australia, because he's an Australian Shepherd. So we kind of named him after both.
Oh, that's awesome. I just had a legal matter in Darwin, actually.
Cool.
The Port Authority is a Chinese entity, and we were advising the sale of a tank farm that's used to supply the U.S. military with forward-basing aviation fuel. And so it was a very complicated transaction. I know that you have this amazing background. You have an MBA as well as a law degree, and you're an expert in blockchain and all these very sophisticated areas of both finance and law. And, I want to, of course, continue to get into the running, but could you talk a little bit about your law practice? Because you're not what I suspect many folks, we've got quite a few subscribers overseas, and they typically think I'm chasing an ambulance someplace. And, I know you don't ever do that.
You're on a billboard and
no billboard, no strong arm for me, but tell us about your practice, and you're an entrepreneur as well. So.
Yeah, no, I mentioned my mother, who was the chief judge of the Iowa Court of Appeals. My father was also an attorney. Both my grandfathers were attorneys. I always said I went to law school to figure out what my parents were talking about. And then I figured it out. And I'm like, well, I don't want to know all the rules. So then I got more into business, and I worked as in a number of different companies as in-house counsel or CFO roles throughout the years until I moved back to the Midwest in 2007. So I spent time in Lake Tahoe. I spent time in Southern California, worked for a trucking site development company. I worked for a recycling company. We recycle construction waste in the Los Angeles Valley. I worked for a software company called The Brain Technologies, which was knowledge management software, which is pre-search, and it kind of dates me quite a bit, but it's amazing. AI is very similar in a lot of ways in how they were thinking about access and computing power. And then I worked for a snowboard, skateboard, and apparel company, the Arbor Collective. which was a lot of fun. It was down on the beach in Venice, California. But then moved back here, and I always say that the law practice allows my curiosity to be utilized every day. There's no 2 days that are the same. I represent all different kinds of businesses. I'm mainly a transactional attorney, so that means a lot of things, as you know. It means that I help businesses do mergers and acquisitions, deal with their employees, deal with their vendors. The firm I'm with now, Bassford Remley, is a little bit larger firm than I've been with in the past. So I've got a little more horsepower with some specialty areas in medical and in finance, construction law, litigation matters. But Bassford's the oldest firm in Minnesota. They opened their first satellite office here in Sioux Falls, and they hired me to run the office down here. So we're having a lot of fun. There's a great shortage of lawyers in the Midwest. I know most of the world probably doesn't feel like there's ever a shortage of lawyers, but we certainly have one here, particularly the rural communities. And so, I've been very passionate about making sure that people that need lawyers and need legal services have it. And that's something that I take a great responsibility to utilize my legal license and the things that allows me to do to help other people and to help business and economic development and all those kind of things.
So the city behind me, Denver, until very recently was second per capita in the United States behind the District of Columbia for the most lawyers, and has always been viewed as a really super saturated legal market. And you're saying that in South Dakota, where you are, and maybe beyond too, because you have a national footprint,
throughout rural Midwest for sure,
there aren't enough lawyers. Can you explain that a little bit? Because I'm pretty sure there are listeners who are having convulsions right now.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, where it's most evident is in rural communities, because in the past, when I grew up in Spencer, Iowa, which is a city of 14,000 people in Northwest Iowa, there were 25 attorneys, and a lot of those attorneys were kind of baby boomers that were my parents' generation. When I started high school in Spencer, I had over 200 kids in my class. When I graduated, I had less than 100. That was during the farm crisis in the 1980s. So a lot of people just left and never came back. And that baby boomer generation worked well into their 60s, but didn't have anything behind it. And so now at this point, there's 3 attorneys in Spencer, Iowa. Maybe 4 if you count somebody who's 80 and he's still practicing. And that's very typical throughout the Midwest. I have a lot of really good attorneys that have really good practices that come to me and said, Barry, what can we do? There's nobody that wants to come and work here. And that's, so there are lawyers that do want to be in Sioux Falls, but even in Sioux Falls, we certainly don't have enough attorneys to service the businesses and the people that are here. So I don't know. I think we certainly in the Midwest have a more acute problem than you do in Denver and they do in larger cities. But if you're a lawyer and you're in a saturated market like Denver, give us a call. we can go run in, we can do all kinds of fun stuff out here.
So seriously on that point, and just by way of illustration, our daughter Emily is 24 and she lives in St. Louis. She's getting her master's, finishing up at Washington University, and she's about ready to go to Catholic graduate school as a John Paul II scholar at the Augustine Institute. She'll get another master's, this one in theology, but she has really taken a shine to the Midwest and to, in her case, St. Louis. And, I'm from Colorado. I grew up here, and my mother has roots from Wisconsin and the upper Midwest. So I know a little bit about the Midwest, but we have a sort of, I don't know if it's arrogance or just self-possession. I guess it just depends on how you look at it. But, we think we're in the best place in the world here. We've got our mountains, in the background here. But increasingly, I've had lots of family and friends want to go to the Midwest. And I'm just curious about this issue. Are you serious? Do you really think that that's something people say in places like Denver or elsewhere where you've lived? You lived in places like LA. Should they think about going to Sioux Falls, or should they think about, and how would that affect their running and their training? And in terms of being an endurance athlete, how does that benefit you to be there?
Yeah, I mean, there's runners everywhere, right? But the community here is very tight. I don't know if you had anybody else do this, but we did a burrito league in January. So I was in between. I just started here at Bassford. I'd been with another firm up and through the end of the year, and I had about 3 weeks off in between. And that happened right when the burrito leagues kind of came into fashion. And so I started one here in town, and it was just this grassroots group of people that all went out and supported and cheered for each other. I always talk about the people in the Midwest have a common sense pragmatism. So, that they're very humble and they're not always great at telling their stories. I don't think that we're that great at saying, hey, come here because it's great. There's a lot more humility there, but as farmers and people that have lived off the land and in the land for generations, we get stuff done. We work hard, we get stuff done. And if that appeals to you, and generally I think as an endurance athlete, that's kind of what the best mentality I've seen. The prima donna endurance athlete usually doesn't last very long. It's the people that are out there every day and are building the bricks, brick after brick to make themselves a good endurance athlete. So I think the mindset of the Midwest is what is most valuable in what I can see. As trail running is becoming more and more of a Instagram sport, I would say, that it's kind of everywhere. I like the races that are a little more dirtbag races that we go out and we run around a field over and over again all night, and there's no big fanfare. It's just being out there for kind of the love of the sport.
So if someone is thinking, yeah, that sounds really intriguing, maybe I've never raced in the Midwest before, what are some races they might want to consider if they're an ultramarathoner?
Well, I mean, the Cowboy 200, which, and I'll just say to you, Troy, that you really gave me the inspiration to run the Cowboy. I had actually run, they'd had a 100-mile race and relay out there in 2019 that started in Valentine, went the other way. And it ended up getting flooded out on the eastern side of it. So we did an out and back, 50 miles out and back. And that's where I happened to meet Lance Smith, who is my good friend now that we run together all the time. So I was always intrigued by the Cowboy Trail. It was a real neat experience when I went out there. And then I'll never forget the day that you posted on LinkedIn that you were going to run the Cowboy 200. And I said, oh man, I want to do that. I think I immediately sent you a message like, I want to go do that too. So I was kind of in a low point in my running because as I said, I'd been more of a marathoner and I wasn't getting faster. I'd moved to Sioux Falls, and it's a little more of an urban environment than I had lived in Northwest Iowa before that, where I lived on a beautiful lake and it was always inviting to go run. But it kind of taught me to run slow because you got to learn how to run slower if you're going to run 200 miles than you are if you're going to try to run 26. Yeah, I mean, so the Cowboy is amazing. It's a great race. There's a couple backyards around here. Minneapolis has a great running community. Done a lot of races up there. There's ran a backyard up in Duluth, Minnesota, on a ski hill, just as you come into town, which is part of the Superior National Trail. Those are great races. I ran the Kettle Moraine 100-miler out in Wisconsin, just outside of Madison. That's a Western States qualifier, so an older race that's been out there. There's a great race called Zumbro in southwest Minnesota. Mines of Spain, which is on the Mississippi River over in Dubuque, Iowa. You would think you were in Colorado if you can ever get out to the Mines of Spain. It is really, you can't believe you're in Iowa when you run it. brutal ultra is down in Omaha, the Hitchcock. It's a looped course, and it is all vert. You are constantly on a hill. There's one little creek bed that you get about a quarter-mile run, and other than that, you're going up or you're going down. I've run that one a number of times. That's a great race. It's run by the GOATs, the Greater Omaha Area Trail Runners with a Z. So, and the Mines of Spain is run by the TURDs, the Trail Runners of the Quad Cities. I don't remember what the acronym even stands for, but they call themselves the TURDs. So, it's a lot of local people that just love running with each other, and always supportive of getting anybody else out there to run with them. So they're not the big sexy races that you're going to see on the internet, but they're a lot of fun. And sometimes if you are out in Colorado, you can come down to sea level and run flat, and all of a sudden you're a superstar, right?
It's so true. It's so true.
All that stuff.
I just did the Badwater Cape Fear 51.4 on 38 miles of it on the beach in North Carolina.
Man, I saw that. I've run long distance on beaches before, man. That's rough.
Well, the fun part for me though was that the first roughly 12 miles is on asphalt. It's a sort of warm up around the island. And it's an island that is a high-end resort island, very historic, was a fort in the Civil War for the Union, and the Confederacy had control of the island for a while. There are a lot of blockade runners up there and so on, but Revolutionary War too. But it was not developed till the 80s. And so the entire island is just residential, and there's no cars allowed. So you just have to rent a golf cart. That's it. You take a ferry to the island. And so the roads are completely free of cars, and they're intimate and narrow for golf carts, but they're wonderfully paved. And so
awesome.
The warm-up was incredible. And I looked down at my watch, and I'm 12 miles in, and I'm still running, like a 7:20 mile. It's like, I have to run a 50-mile race. And so I banked all this time. And I think the reason for it was just that running at sea level. When I did the math, it was exponential. It's like a 25% advantage for me to be running at sea level. And so it does make a difference. But I want to come back to the Cowboy, because for those who don't know, the Cowboy 200 is from Norfolk, which is in the maybe, I'm going to say, eastern part of Nebraska, maybe northeast.
Yeah, pretty eastern.
And then you go all the way heading into the wind, heading to the west, and you end up in a town called Valentine. And you end up in the sandhill country. So it's very flat, but it becomes more challenging as it goes. But it's largely a race that doesn't have much elevation to it, maybe 2,000 feet overall. But I found, I was the first year was in that race, and I found it to be one of the most challenging things that I've ever tried to do in terms of running, because it's very difficult to run that long on that terrain that's so exposed and so wide open. And I'm curious about your experiences. There's a video out there, your friend Lance Smith, and you're running the Cowboy, and he actually documents. It's on YouTube, and I really encourage everyone to watch it. It's pretty exciting. And you have this incredibly fast finish, and you did so well, 6th place overall. Talk about your Cowboy experience and kind of maybe relate it to some of the other things you talked about, because I know there's some very challenging vertical as well in some of these other races like Hitchcock. But talk about Cowboy. Why should somebody run the Cowboy 200?
Yeah, it's it's a rails to trails, so it's all a railroad bed. I mean, there's a couple of little diversions that you've got to go run on some county roads that have a little more elevation. The last section going into Valentine, you go up a hill, and a railroad hill means that you're going at a very low grade for a very long time. So, it's 10 plus miles up at 100 mile, 190. So it's tough, but when I ran it, I started out with a 10-minute run, 5-minute walk. It's all about kind of maintaining yourself and understanding that, it's how do I keep moving? And then you've got this trail that looks remarkably similar for 200 miles. And so, you pick out a tree, and the tree is what you're going to run up to. And if you get there before the 10 minutes, I mean, a lot of mental games. I was so fortunate, that Lance paced me for 135 miles.
Wow.
He could jump in at mile 65, and he was going to jump. He was just going to go a little ways for me. It just happened that his son had a cross country meet in Norfolk where we started the day before, or the day we started. So he went to the meet, and then he came out and met me. And then he kind of kept going, and then I kind of convinced him to go a little further and go a little further. And then he got close enough to the end that he said, well, I just got to go all the way. It was fun. I had a text string. I've got 4 siblings, 2 older brothers, a younger brother, and a younger sister. And 2 of my brothers are TV and movie producers. And we've got a group of friends who are all very funny people because they do comedies. And those text strings got me through a lot of miles, because anytime I kind of needed a little pickup, I would post something on there. They'd make fun of me because what are you doing out in the middle of nowhere? There was an amazing guy that I beat, which I feel bad about even saying it, Michael Copy. So Michael was ahead of me, and my brothers were kind of in that group were prodding me like, you got to catch Michael Copy. You got to catch Michael Copy. You're getting close to him, and this is like a mile 175. So mile 180, I get up to Michael Copy and I pass him. Michael Copy is 74 years old. So as I'm passing him, I realize who I passed, and I'm like, well, I don't feel good about passing the 74-year-old guy. But Michael just, he's a gamer. He's run Cocodona and a bunch of other stuff. And he just kind of kicked me in the butt and said, keep going, dude. He wasn't upset at all. He just, it was part of the game. He kind of had the ultramarathoner lean at that point, which I know you've faced in some of your longer races as well. But I was, I've run the Boston Marathon. I ran that the year after the bombing, which was, one of the kind of most impressive runs I've done, just the amount of emotion that was involved there. But the Cowboy 200 was right there. It was just such a, you've got a lot to overcome. There's a lot of the kind of demons that you need to run through in a 200 miler, over 60 plus hours, that I would, and Chase puts on a great race. He's a runner. I always look for races that runners are the race directors, right? That they understand kind of what we need, and ultras that they're not going to coddle you. They're not going to, say, hey, I'm going to make this easy for you, but they're going to give you what you need. They're going to keep you safe. They're going to make sure that, you get there, and they're going to be really happy to see you when you get finished and give you a big smile and a big hug. So, that's a great race. I definitely want to get back to it. As I said, they started a backyard ultra this year, and that again was 40 of my best friends after we all ran together. I know all their stories because you get a chance to run with each one of them. So it's been a ton of fun.
So I think you are definitely the first guest on Chasing the Cutoff who's actually been on Seinfeld. Is that right?
Yes.
So why were you on Seinfeld?
So my brother Morgan, he's won 3 or 4 Emmys. He's done shows like Parks and Recreation, Veep. He's currently doing a new show with Amy Poehler called Dig. Actually, Amy Poehler and Hugh Laurie. It's a comedy about archaeologists, which they'll be funny, I'm sure. But anyway, I was in law school. I had been studying in Europe for the summer, and I flew back through Los Angeles. And he was working on Seinfeld, and he said, "Hey, do you want to be in a scene?" And I go, "Of course, I want to be in a scene." So I had kind of long hair at the time. I was a bit of a hippie, and so they put me in this coffee shop. And the episode is the one with Fred Savage is actually in the scene that I'm in. Kramer sees Fred Savage in a coffee shop and kind of accosts him because he wants him to read his script that he wrote. it wasn't the best Seinfeld episode of all time, but I got paid $100. And so, it was kind of this sly thing that I'd put on my resume after that, because I was a paid extra. So I used that. But no, proud of my brothers. And my younger brother, Frank, is also a producer out there. He does post-production stuff on a lot of the shows that Morgan works on. And when I first moved to Los Angeles, that was my plan to get into that business. But I landed in Los Angeles on September 10th, 2001. Next day, the world changed. So instead of working in the movies, I worked in the garbage business and became a CFO of a construction waste recycling company. But, life gives you lemons, and you just make the most of them.
So how about your family? Talk about your family some more. You talked about your mom, who was the chief judge of the Iowa Court of Appeals, and you talked about a couple of your brothers, but
yeah,
some more about your family.
Sure. Well, my oldest brother Murphy is a captain. He does charter boats out of San Diego, big fishing boats, sailing boats, big 100-foot yachts that he drives for people. And his daughter Maggie, who goes to San Luis Obispo, brilliant young woman. My youngest sibling is the only girl. My mother, who was the chief judge of the Idaho Court of Appeals and had 5 kids, and I still just boggles my mind how you can pull that combo off. But she's also an attorney. She practiced out in Marin County, California. Lives in San Rafael. But then she was an insurance defense attorney, and then she decided to save her soul by becoming a politician, which again is the perversion of our profession. But she's a member of the Board of Supervisors of Marin County, California. She's running for her second term. So if you live in Marin County, please vote for Mary Sackett. I would appreciate that. But does great work out there, and it's a very unique place where you certainly have a liberal population, but they are also well-to-do. So they want to solve all the world's problems, but just not in their backyard. So there's some challenges there. So I'm really proud of her and what she's done. And then my wife, Joanne, is an amazing woman. She is a teacher. She was a talented and gifted coordinator and has a master's in talented and gifted studies. But then as our kids grew into middle school and high school, she's kind of followed them through their education. My oldest daughter, Sylvia, is graduating in a couple of weeks here and going to Sarah Lawrence out in New York in the fall. And then my younger daughter, Venice, is a sophomore and will be a junior next year. Just bought her first car yesterday and sent her off to school today without any chaperones. So, going through that stuff. And then I mentioned Darwin, our Australian Shepherd. We also have a pug who's Toast, our pug, who is blind and deaf, but used to run with me for a number of years before she's kind of become older. And then Izzy, a 3-legged lab mix, who also ran with me up to 10 miles. With 3 legs until, again, she got a little older. Now, Darwin's my only running partner these days.
So you've got some good Darwin stories, running stories?
Yeah, well, if you get into Lance Smith's videos, Lance likes Darwin a lot more than he likes me. So
that's clear from those videos.
yeah, it's pretty clear, isn't it? So Darwin and I, there's a race just south of Sioux Falls called the Blood Run that they run every Labor Day weekend. And it's a 1.5 mile loop. It's kind of a backyard ultra, but it's even shorter than that. It's a timed race. So they've got a 36-hour, 24-hour, 12-hour, 6-hour race. And so I took Darwin out there a couple of years ago, and they allowed me to run Darwin on the course. We made it 50 miles. I wasn't watching her pads that well, and she got a little tear in her pads. So we had to pull out, but we'll take another run at it, or maybe get another race, because Darwin could definitely go farther and faster than I can. And because as you know, with your dogs, they run twice as far as you do when they're chasing rabbits and sniffing around the woods.
Oh yeah, no question. Athena, my late English Springer, and I ran 4 marathons in 4 states in 4 consecutive days in December 2018. And, no leash. The Navajo Nation allowed me to use Athena as my service animal, which was that she could just run with everybody else. And she stays with me.
So those were actual races that you did in 4 different states.
Yeah. And
that's so cool.
There's something called the Quad Kea. Kea is Navajo for land. And it's a competition that Navajo Yes does every December. And it draws people from all over the world. And you run 4 marathons in 4 consecutive days. Each marathon starts on the Four Corners Monument, where the 4 corner states touch. And so you get to do one in all the 4 corners states. So for those who are looking to, say, run all 50 states and so on, it's a great way to knock it out in 4 days. But yeah, I was coming off of having had surgery and then learning to walk again in 2017, 2018. I ran the New York Marathon in 2018, was my first big race coming back. And then a month later, Athena and I ran the 4 days of the Quad Kea. And yeah, we were second place overall. And it was amazing because we tried to calculate how many miles Athena ran. And Athena was running probably, we figured afterwards, between 60 and 70 miles a day.
Wow. Were those all trail races?
Yeah, they were all really brutal trail races because it snowed for 2 of the days, and the snow the first day, and then the second day was a sea of mud, an absolute sea of mud, and then it was nice, meaning that it was 25 degrees nice, but not snowing. And then just tremendous snowfall the last day, and yeah, it was a great experience because I went out there by myself and we rented a little cabin in Bluff, Utah, and it was just me and Athena for a week. And we got out there and we did our races, and each day we would make it back to Bluff, which was about an hour and a half away, one-way drive. And, we made our own food and we just hung out together, and they wouldn't allow the dog on the bed, but they didn't know. So it was because we were both so wiped out every day, we were just,
oh man, just so the hour and a half drive back. That's dangerous. I've gotten pulled over for drunk driving, trying to drive home from an ultra before. So, I mean,
oh yeah. I've had some terrible driving experiences where, in my, are you 56? Is that how old you are?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, in my mid 50s, I had some terrible experiences where I'd run like a 50-mile race, get in the car and drive back, 11 and a half hours. And then, I couldn't get out of the car. I mean, like literally I'd be on the cell phone trying to wake up my wife to help me to get out of bed so I could get out of the car without falling down. I mean, it's just not a smart thing to do. I can't do those things anymore. So
no. Yeah. And you'd think we'd learn those lessons, but we forget about them until we end up in that same situation again. Well, one race that I'm really looking forward to, Troy, is to come out to Moab 240 with you this year.
Oh, well, that's exciting. So let's talk a little bit about that. So have you run out in Moab before? Have you done any of those?
I have not. I've driven through Moab. I've run in Arizona some, but I've not run in Moab. So I've watched a lot of videos, and Max's video, and who's the Canadian guy that got second a couple of years ago? Jeff Peltier.
Peltier,
yeah.
He's amazing. So I subscribe to his channel. I think he's amazing, and yeah, that's the greatest video. I just love that one, and he's a tremendous person. But yeah, so I'm ready to go. Moab 240. It's an interesting year. I'm doing the race across Switzerland, called Crossing Switzerland. It's a 400K in July with Mark and Trina Rulin crewing me, the same folks who crewed me in the race across Scotland, and their son Brock. So I'm kind of excited. I'll have a 3-person crew, and we're going to have a van so that we can get across Switzerland, and I'll have at least some place for some shelter and a little bit of sleep. But then if all goes well, I'm trying to do the training volume that I can get through that and then do the Moab 240 is my plan. And I'm excited about Moab, very excited about Moab. And you have graciously offered, and I've accepted. And I'm overwhelmed actually that you would pace in that. And I can't thank you enough for that. I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh gosh. Well, let's get there before you thank me too much, but I'm looking forward to it so much. I've at 56 and you're still amazingly fast. I was, much quicker earlier on. And so my accolades are not what I'm worried about. I would really almost rather pace people than run my own race because it's so rewarding to help other people and see them make it through. I mentioned I got to pace Lance in his FKT just a couple of weeks ago. It
incredible.
Was such a great day. I mean, it's a day I won't forget. So I'm so looking forward to getting out there and pacing you. So I, make it through Switzerland so you can make it to Moab.
No, I'm excited.
Just so I can pace you. If that's what it takes to get you there, then go ahead and use it.
I'm so excited. I'm trying to not be, and we should talk a little about this. So, I try to not be daunted by these things. And so my mind trick for years and years and years has been to think about the race after the next race. So right now I'm not thinking about Badwater Salton Sea, which is next week for me and Chris Hill. We're going to do this 81 mile.
Yeah, you're doing it as a duo. That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's a team race. You have to run in a team of 2 or 3. And so we're team Scylla and Charybdis. So we're kind of excited about starting at the Salton Sea, 300 feet below sea level, and then ending up on the top of Mount Palomar. And it's mostly road. There's an 8-mile trail section in the middle at mile 40. That's a 4,000-foot climb on a single track. So it's an odd race because you're out in the desert on the freeway or highway, and then you end up on this trail section, then you're up on a winding mountain road after that is how I understand it. But I'm planning for it because there's a ton of logistics, and my wife, Allison, and her sister, Amy Hartwell, are crewing us. So it's a lot because there are no aid stations. You have to have your own vehicle, and it's entirely self-supported race. But even with all the logistics, I'm actually more concerned about pacing Paul James Johnson at Cocodona, which I'm going to do.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, the first week in May, I've got 2 overnight sections. I'm going to do one section, Mingus Mountain and so on. And then I'm going to go back to Prescott and sleep a little bit, I hope, get cleaned up, and then do another overnight section is the plan. And Paul is a machine. And if you haven't seen his podcast, it's called The Work. And every week he documents his preparations for Cocodona. And, he's done it. He DNF'd the first year, but he's now successfully raced it 3 times. So if he can do it 4 times now, he'll get the 1,000-mile buckle. So this is a big year for him. So
that's cool.
We're pretty excited. Cool. I'm nervous about this pacing. I mean, so
I'm nervous about pacing you. I mean, the elevation certainly is something that I'm worried about, but I hopefully will catch you at the end when I can keep up with you with no problem.
You're quite a bit faster than I am from what I can tell in all these races. It's just not much of a competition. I just am hoping I don't tick you off by being way too slow. So.
No, I'll tell you, when I was out pacing Lance a couple of weeks ago, it was just one of those days. I drove out there in the middle of the night. I just wasn't feeling good at all. You just have those days that you've got no energy, legs are heavy. But when you're pacing somebody, you can't say a word about you, right? I mean, it's all about, as far as Lance knew, I was just as happy as a clam and chipper and everything else. And we ran out of Hill City up to Custer, which is past Crazy Horse. And it was a 10-mile just grinder of an uphill, and had a smile on my face the whole time, but I'll tell you, I wasn't feeling very good.
So what was your most memorable day or night or even moment in your running journey? Is there one moment that kind of stands out, or maybe a few different moments that something happened to you?
Well, I mentioned it earlier, but I'll tell you, when I ran Boston, it was the year after the bombing. And the year before that, I had been training, and I was watching the Boston Marathon at my office. I kind of was cheating, had it on the internet. I mean, way back then. And all of a sudden the feed went off and it kind of went away, and I didn't know what happened. And I found out that night what happened. And the next morning I woke up and I ran a marathon that next morning, because I was just so affected by that holy place of finishing a race, the violation of it. So I then went on a tear and I trained my butt off and I qualified. I ran a sub 3 hour marathon. I qualified. I was going to Boston the next year and I made it there. And right before the start, I was in the sub elite corral and they asked for a moment of silence and the squadron of fighters flew over the top. Still just gets me when I talk about it. It was just such a special day. And then, ran with a number of the survivors that were running. Joan Benoit Samuelson happened to be almost in my same pace. She was the first Olympic marathon champion in LA. She set the Masters 40 record, and I kind of ran along with her the whole time, and people were cheering for her. So that was a really special day as far as running and that what that meant to me. The other thing that we do, I mentioned Lance before. So we next couple weeks from now, we've got the B&G Milky Way run, which will B&G Milky Ways are kind of Dairy Queens, a local franchise of ice cream shops that are all over Sioux Falls. So we'll run to all of them, basically use them as our aid station, bring people along the way if they want to run between a couple of them. I mean, I think that one will end up being about a 25-mile run. But we bring awareness to something. We bring people out, get them out of their house. Last year we did one to a new convenience store in town called Quick Stars. We raised $15,000 for Feeding South Dakota. Lance's oldest son, he's got a very fast son right now who's Griffin Smith, who's got second in the 800 last year, but it is running at South Dakota State next year. But his older son had a friend who committed suicide, and we ran a couple of big runs to create awareness around teen suicide. So those ones are always special. I mean, to see people that come out, we have a crazy idea and we say, we're going to run to a bunch of gas stations. And all of a sudden we get, 30, 40 people out there that are running with us, and they're doing it for a good reason and a good cause. And they bring that together. Those are the things that really, really touch me. And then, and Troy, I know you feel this too. I mean, those mornings that I'm out there, just me and Darwin, and the sun comes up and you see a deer run across the trail, and, you see a bald eagle fly over the river. Those moments that in running every single day, I get those so often, but I hope I don't ever, lose the awe of that moment, the awe of when that happens, because it's really, it certainly influences my life and allows me to be a lot more happy when I'm dealing with the clients and, heavy legal issues and everything else. It gives me a lot. It's a really valuable thing.
What is your day like in terms of you're a run streaker, so you're running every day? But say like a day like today, where are you running on road or trail, or what's it kind of like? Help us understand.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're a run streaker, early mornings are, I think, the key to the whole thing. When nobody else needs you except your dog, everybody else is still asleep, you've got no excuse. So, I mean, every day I roll out of bed and I got my clothes laid out and my shoes that I grab a different pair every day, and I go out the door. This morning I ran with a good friend of mine I run with quite a bit. And we did 5. He's got a couple dogs. I got a dog. We kind of take over the trail and run around and talk about all kinds of things in life. But most days, just me and Darwin. We try to mix it up and do something different every day. I've got this hill race coming up, so we're trying to get some vert in. Then the really neat things is when I'm traveling with the family, traveling with to other places. I get up early and go run. We were in the Galapagos Islands, for example, a couple of years ago, and got up early and ran around the island. Found all these neat little things that you see at sunset, and then I go home, wake everybody up. I'm like, you got to go see this stuff that I found, in the woods. And my kids kind of roll their eyes at me, but I hope someday they'll appreciate it. It's, the run streak is kind of different than running. I mean, it's this thing that I will always do. It takes the hardest part, I think, of running is, getting your shoes out and getting out the door. And the run streak, that's never an option for me, right? I mean, that's just going to happen. And once you get out the door, the running part of it's a lot easier than putting the shoes on and getting out the door. So it's pretty powerful.
Let me ask you just about sustainability and recovery. So you're a run streaker. You log quite a bit of road and trail time. It sounds like you're on your feet quite a bit.
50, 60 miles a week.
60 miles a week. So you're running a lot of distance. And do you spend time in the gym as well? Do you do much cross training, or how does that go?
Yeah. And again, sometimes I'm better and sometimes I'm worse. Historically, I look at when have I run my fastest marathons? When have I been my best? It's when I'm triathlon training. I used to live on a lake in Northwest Iowa that I would swim every morning. I usually get up, run the dog, jump on a bike, ride, 10 miles and then jump in the lake. And that's great. Right now I row. I've got a rowing machine in the basement. We just got through the winter months here. And so I jump on that, most mornings, probably 4 or 5 days a week, do a 5K on the rower. I started working out with a personal trainer that I've used over the years that I kind of, go on and off with. But, at 56, I got some niggles that don't go away quickly, that just take a little bit longer. I've got a great physio that, Caitlin McNamara, who's an amazing physio. She almost qualified for the Olympic trials in the marathon. So she's a runner's physio, so she knows that she's not going to tell me to rest, right? She's not going to say, go take a week off of running, because she knows who she's dealing with. But she will recommend that, hey, maybe not the 50 miler this weekend. But surrounding yourself with people that get it. My wife, I think, your wife sounds amazing in that she's crewing you on these things. My wife used to like to go to the big city marathons that we'd go to because it was more of a vacation. The ultras where she sees me and then 12 hours later, she's sitting in the woods and she sees me again. Not quite as exciting.
Yeah. We have that same dynamic because, I had a marathon majors kind of cycle in my career too. And Allison would go, she especially liked the New York Marathon, I think, but she would always get the bleachers. She would buy the tickets so she could see the elites. She really wanted to see the elites and was more interested in that probably than anything else. Yeah. But you don't get that really in ultra because, if you say, meet me at such and such place, the elites in our sport, if there are any in the race, are, who knows how many hours or days they are.
Right, 12 hours before you get there. That is the neat thing about the Backyard Ultra, that, it is a little more spectator friendly. They can come out, spend 2-3 hours and see it, 2 or 3 times and actually be meaningful. Of course, when you really need them is, at 3 a.m. when nobody's around and everybody's miserable. But that's part of the game for sure.
So what are your running plans? Just looking forward, do you expect to continue running? I think the answer is probably yes, but
I did a TEDx a couple of years ago that kind of the idea behind the TED Talk was running 100 miles is like living to be 100. Our generation is the first that has more than a 10% chance to live to be 100 years old. And I just turned 50 when I did this, and as you're running a 100 miler, you get to mile 50 and you kind of look and you think, well, that's great. I've made it 50 miles, but you also realize I got 50 miles to go and I'm not feeling too chipper right now. And so it was kind of with that view in mind of thinking, how do you do this? It's, the miles 70 through 80 are going to be much different than miles 50 through 60. And, so I certainly hope to use running as an important part of my life. And, the energy and the people that I meet that run, I'm interviewing an attorney right now, and halfway through the interview, I found out that he was a runner, and he's done Ironmans and ultras, and all of a sudden we had a lot in common. you kind of know their soul a little bit. So, so I I'll continue to run. As I said to you, I'm focusing more on trying to pace people because I get a lot of enjoyment out of that. Me and Lance will. So we've got a 20-mile bike loop around Sioux Falls. And Lance and I have run that loop once a month for the last 40 months. We just ran this weekend. And we usually get and Darwin as well. Darwin's run all 40 of them with us. So, but we usually get another group of people. We had quite a big group this last weekend, so it was a lot of fun. So, it's part of who I am for sure. And it's funny how runners are very, they can be very introverted, and getting them out of their shell can be difficult. I've got a podcast called the Pickle Podcast, and it's a while running podcast. So the Pickle is this Strava segment around these soccer fields in southern Sioux Falls. So we run around it twice. It's exactly 2 miles once around. So you run 4 miles, and we just have a conversation about their life and running. And, kind of like you, I just did it because I love talking to people about running, and I'd get people to come out and go running with me at 5 a.m. and tell me their story. And they're all fascinating. Last week, my latest one, I had a woman who I'd seen running quite a bit, didn't really know that much about her. She's a pediatric oncologist, and she just lost a patient the week before, and what she went through to become what she is was so inspiring, and how running really helped her get to where she is was super cool to listen to. So I love those stories. I love what you're doing. There's a lot of us that are out here that run not to win the race, but run to do good work and to try to, excel in our lives. And you're giving a voice to that. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, you're kind, and thank you seriously for all the encouragement, but also for all the leadership. I mean, you've been out talking about this. I saw online on YouTube when you presented at Okoboji. That's you might talk about that for a second, because I wish everybody would go and watch that. It's just quite beautiful what you read and told that big audience, giant audience actually, about running an ultra.
Yeah, it was cool. I kind of decided they were having a TEDx event, and I said, hey, I want to do it on this. And they said, oh, that'd be great. And the thing about the TED Talk is you got to memorize your script, which we're lawyers and we talk all the time, but we don't memorize our scripts. We kind of could move along and talk about things as they come. So that was very challenging for me. And the other thing is the idea that you're trying to get across, that's the only thing you can talk about. So you don't have any diversions of talking about other things that happen. At the time, I ran, while I was writing, I ran the Mines of Spain 100. And it wasn't my fastest 100 miler, but I think it was my best. You run your race that I executed well. And the reason I executed well is I ran across a guy at mile 28 who was in his first 100 miler, and I kind of took him under my wing, and he and I ran together for the rest of it. I had a pacer that did a section with us, and he had a pacer that did a section with us, but we were together the rest of the race. Doing it with him, for him, just made it a better race. And then as I was coming home from that race, my great aunt was 106, Kathy Shores. She was 106 years old, and she'd gone into the hospital, and I stopped and I sat with her, and she was still very sharp and alert, and had what ended up being my final conversation with her. So I think the thing that I highlighted most was that this group of particularly trail runners, and I'm not trying to downgrade road runners, but trail runners seem to have a different bond because we know what it takes to be out there And you rarely see a trail runner that isn't encouraging to whoever they see. And that's the real value, because, you can then take that into the rest of your life, because we're all struggling. I mean, there's tough things that are happening in the world today and that have always happened in people's personal lives. And if you can use that ability to kind of see it through, that we practice in running ultramarathons, it's a pretty valuable thing to have.
Well, Barry Sackett, congratulations and Godspeed on everything you've done and will do. It's really a privilege to be with you.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Troy, and look forward to Moab.
Me too.